In this video, we are going to see how to implement the FindLast method from C# procedurally. This is Daniel, and you are going to get coded. Here I have Visual Studio opened, and let's try to create a new console application by going File, New Project, and under Visual C# Windows Desktop Console App, I will try to type FindLast and hit OK. While this is loading, here I have a link. You can find the link in the description down below. So, as I said, we are going to implement from scratch or procedurally the FindLast method from C#. So, we have an array of fruits: apple, cherry, pineapple, and plum. And then we have a variable, a local variable item, which is set to null. One important thing that you have to notice here is that we have a for loop, which is not so usual. This is the reversed for loop. So we start from the end of the array and we iterate through the items until the beginning of the array. So let's see. We start with an I equals, which is equal to fruits.length minus 1. So you need to remember we are one step back with indexes. So apple is 0, cherry is 1, pineapple is 2, and plum is 3. So we are starting with plum because plum is 3. We need to start with 3. So fruits.length is 4 and we need minus 1. So again, we are one step back, one step backwards. Then we have here the condition. So I is greater or equal than 0, and then I minus minus. So we decrement the I once we loop, while we loop over this 4. And then we have an if statement. So we are trying to check if the current item, so fruits index I, contains the letter L. So we are trying to find the last item that contains the letter L. When this is true, so when we have found one, we are going to assign that specific value to the item, so to this local variable that we have right here. And then we break the execution. There is no need for us to continue until the beginning of the array. So we will start with plum. Plum contains L. This is going to be true because of that. And then we are going to assign plum to the item. So this item will hold plum. And then we are going to break the execution. So we no longer looping over the array with the next items. We just break the for loop and we print out that specific item, which is plum. So let's see that in action. Windows key, right arrow, and let's begin typing. So var fruits equals new square brackets, and we have apple, cherry, pineapple, and plum. So these 4 variables over here. And then we have string item equal null, and the initial value of this item is null. So we start with the premise, we assume that there is no such item in our array. So we start with the default value for string, which is indeed null. And then we need a for loop, so 4. And right now we don't need a normal for loop, but we need a reversed for loop. You have a shortcut for that. So instead of 4, you have 4 with double R, so 4R. And let's press tab, and this will create the actual reversed for loop. So I starts from fruits.length minus 1, so from the last index, and while I is greater or equal than 0 and I minus minus. Let's hit enter. We need an if statement, so if tab fruits index I contains letter L. So if we find this that we are looking for, this item, then item is going to be fruits I. And break. Okay, let's try to print this to the console. CW tab, and we are going to print item. And for us to be able to see what we have on the console, we need console.readKey to be able to see what we have there. So let's try to press F5 and see the actual result. And hopefully we are going to see plum indeed. This is a little bit too small. Let me try to zoom in a little bit. So plum. Because this is the last item in our array which satisfies this condition to contain the letter L. Let's try to change it to see like another condition. So instead of containing the letter L, let's try to see if the length is, let's say, I don't know, 5. So fruits.length equals 5. So give me the last item that contains, that has the length 5. Give me that. So once we find an item which has that length of 5, we are going to assign to the item, and we are going to break the execution of the for loop. So let's try to press F5 this time and see what we get. And we get apple. Why? Because the length of this is 4, the length of this is a lot, is 9 I think, this is 6, and this is 5. This is indeed the item that we want, that satisfies this condition. So the last item. Okay, let's try to use the debugger to see the actual result, the actual values of the variables. So let's try to put a breakpoint over here. So you can set breakpoints to stop the execution of the application. And when we set a breakpoint over here, the program will run no further than this line over here. So let's try to press F5 this time. And I'm going to pull this a little bit to the left side, and let's try to see. So I am in the locals window as well. So we have fruits, apple, cherry, pineapple, and plum. Then the item is null and the I is 0. So let's try to press F11 to step into. So right now I is 3. 3 is greater than or equal than 0, which is true. You can see true here. So let's try to see the item. So that length. So the current length, the length of the current item is 4. You can see here. So the current item starting from the end of the array is plum. So this plum is here, and the length of that plum is 4. 4 is not equal to 5. If we press F11, you can see that it jumped over this because it's not true, it's false. Okay, F11. Right now we decrease the I, so the I gets 2. 2 is still greater or equal than 0. So we are going to see if this length is 5. Right now pineapple, and if we hover over length, we can see that it is 9. 9 is not equal to 5. So this is going to jump over again, so we don't execute the statements that are inside the body of the if statement, and we jump over. Why? Because this is false. These statements are executed only if the condition is true. Okay, let's try to press F11 again. I gets 1. 1 is still greater or equal than 0, which is true. And I was 1, right? So false. And we are talking about cherry over here. So this one is cherry. That length is 6. So there are 6 characters inside the word cherry. 6 is not equal to 5. So we just jumped over. The next time I is 0. So 0 is greater or equal than 0? Yes, it is equal. So we are still executing these lines. Right now, we are talking about apple. So apple.length, if we hover over, we have 5. 5 is equal to 5? Yes, indeed. And finally, we execute the lines that are inside the if statement. So we are going to assign the value to the item. Right now the item is null because we have not found any item that has 5 characters, but now we have. So if we press F11, you can see that right now the item gets the value apple, and we are going to break the execution. And then we print out the console. Let me try to pull this down. If I press F11, you can see that right now I have apple indeed to the console. So this is how you can use the debugger to see actual the values. So let's try to stop the execution. And let's reiterate over what I have done. So we need the local variable of type string, so the type of the array, because we need to assign one of these values, so it has to be the same type. This is why we have string over here. And then item equal null. So this is the default. This is how we want to start. I want to start with a null value. I don't have any item. And then we are trying to iterate over to see if there is an item that has 5 characters. If there is such an item, we are going to assign that specific value, so that item, to our item variable, and then we are going to break the execution. In our case, apple is printed because it has 5 characters. So this is the FindLast method. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please click thumbs up. Also, my goal right now is to have 1,000 subscribers, so consider subscribing. Until next time, bye guys.